So a topic that we're going to hear coming up a lot when learning about the law and application of these teachings is about persistence. You are going to hear all the time about the importance of persisting in the wish fulfilled. Continue to persist until what you desire comes to pass. Seriously though, you're going to hear this ad nauseum. And that is because it is a really important topic to know and understand when it comes to the law. But in this video, I want to talk about the ways that this is getting misconstrued and people are taking away something completely different when they hear the word persistence. And the importance of making the distinction of what persistence really means could be the difference between success and failure at this. So today, I want to talk about it. I want to talk about persistence. I want to talk about what this is, what this means in context to the law of assumption, and how to actually persist, how to actually apply this so that you can begin to see your desired outcomes. By the way, hi, I'm Missy Renee, and on this channel we talk all things manifestation and the law of assumptions, so if that's a topic that you want to learn more about, then definitely be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon for notifications, and if you enjoy my videos, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. If you're interested in any of my resources, such as my coaching programs, workshops, or masterclasses, I've got links to all of that down in the description box below, so don't forget to check that out. So there's a lot to discuss, so I'm going to go ahead and dive right in. When it comes to the topic of persistence, this is one that I get questions about all the time. And I wanted to make this video really making the distinction between persistence and the mistake that everybody tends to make, especially if we are new at this. But before we can really dive into that, we have to have an understanding of what persistence actually means. Because the key takeaway here, the most important thing that you need to remember always, is that persistence does not equal effort. And this is where I'm seeing so many people get stuck. Persistence does not equal trying harder or working harder or pushing yourself or fighting yourself or anything like that. Persistence is basically what Neville will refer to as attention minus effort. All this means, all we have to remember, is that to persist means to go back to that state of the wish fulfilled if we fall out of it. And at first, we're likely going to fall out of that state quite often. It's important to remember that we are all creatures of habit. As human beings, we have an unconscious routine, repetition that we do on the subconscious level. 95% of the day, we're operating on autopilot. So without thinking or without trying, without effort, we're naturally going through the motions, both internally and externally. So when you are introducing a new way of thinking, when you are introducing a new teaching, something that you have not incorporated before, it's likely that you're not going to be perfect at this at first. It's likely that you're going to forget. It's likely that you're going to fall back into that autopilot. It's likely that you are going to fall back into that old state. And to be 1,000% clear, it's okay if that happens. In fact, it is very likely going to happen. So when we talk about persistence, all that is referring to is the redirection of the mind, where you are directing your attention. It is taking note of when you're noticing all of the old fears or old thinking patterns. Basically, if you're finding yourself not in the state of the wish fulfilled, that you just gently redirect yourself and go back to that state. 70 times 7, as Neville would say. And this is a crucial part of this whole process, because if we're not redirecting our attention, if we are not being deliberate about where our focus goes, we're going to just wander back into the same old thinking patterns. We're going to wander back into that old state and do the same old, same old. So there is a redirection that is needed. There is an observation and awareness that has to occur, which is why self-observation is such an important part of all of this. We are taking note of when we're falling back into patterns, and when we do that, we turn ourselves back. We continue to go to the end in imagination. We continue to imagine and experience in imagination what it is like living that ideal version of you, what it is like living that ideal outcome. So if you desire abundance, if you desire wealth, then you're going into imagination and you are imagining, you are experiencing what it is like to be abundant. What would you be doing? What would you be thinking? How would your life look different than how it does now? All of these things constitute persistence and going back to that state of the wish fulfilled. Because the idea is to create new patterns here. The idea is to disrupt that old autopilot and saturate ourselves in that new feeling, in that new state, until that new state, that desired state, becomes the dominant one. That becomes our new dwelling place. That becomes our new home. All of that said, what I am seeing is that a lot of people are confusing persistence with putting in effort, with making this a chore, with treating this as though we have a bunch of work to do. We try to micromanage, we try to push and strain ourselves to get into that feeling state. We feel like we need to be repetitive constantly throughout the day to day, to the point where it feels exhausting, to the point where it feels like work. And this is a mistake. And if we are doing this, we have to stop. Because one of the most important things that you need to remember, and Neville also emphasized the importance of this, is that this is not about the conscious willpower. This is not about trying to manifest. And this is a topic that I have reiterated many times, and I am going to continue to repeat because this is a default that a lot of people are going back to, especially for those who are new to the law, especially for those that are still learning about this. Many people are mistaking persistence to mean effort. They are mistaking it to mean using that willpower, using that force, wrestling with your mind, combating negative thoughts, fighting with yourself. We must learn to get ourselves out of this habit if it is something that we are doing. And I think a lot of the confusion actually is stemming from the word itself, persistence. When we think of persistence, we think of working hard. So it is completely understandable where this confusion comes from. So perhaps we can use a different word going forward. Personally, I prefer consistency or frequency, because that just implies going back to the state of the wish fulfilled as many times as needed. Not that we need to do so by force. Frequent occupation of the state of the wish fulfilled is key. However, we want to remember that it is important to do so when we are in a relaxed state. If we are feeling anxious, if we are feeling tense, if we are feeling stressed, then we want to first focus on getting ourselves in a more relaxed state and then go to the end and then go into imagination, because by doing so, there's going to be considerably less resistance. A terrible habit that all of us learn and we have to break is trying to force a good feeling or force yourself to go to the end when we are triggered, when we are upset, when we are stressed. And for anybody who has tried to do this, you can attest to how difficult this is. So before we even go into imagine, before we go into our affirmations or our visualizations, we want to do so from first a relaxed state. This is why Neville Goddard was so big on SATs and getting yourself first into the drowsy state before imagining, because he understood the importance of that relaxed state and how in a drowsy state, in a meditative state, we can apply that attention minus effort. We can take the strain out of this. So we want to be frequent with going to the end. We want to be consistent in occupying that new state. However, we want to do so from the place of least effort. And this is the one thing that I wish I knew when I was new at all this, when I was just learning the law. If I could go back and talk to the Missy Renee who was new to all of this, the thing that I would emphasize the most is the importance of no effort. So how do we clarify the difference between persisting and trying too hard? How can we distinguish if we are persisting and being disciplined, but not putting in too much effort? The most important thing here for this distinction is whether or not we are relaxed. It is first getting yourself into a relaxed state. But what most of us are doing unknowingly is trying to control the manifestation. We are trying to micromanage every thought that goes through our mind. We're trying to put force into every imaginal act, and this is causing a hell of a lot of resistance and strain. One thing that you need to know going forward is that it is not your ego that creates. Your ego, or your concept of self, your conscious thinking mind, is not the creator here. The creator here is your consciousness, your awareness. That is the greater you. That is God. That is why we do not need to worry about the how or when or any of those details, because as the human ego, we could not possibly conceive of the myriad of ways in which what we desire can unfold for us. As the ego mind, we are too scared, we are too limited, we are too stubborn, too anxious, too needy. The ego self, the human part of you, is not the one creating here. It is the greater unconscious part of you. It is that greater awareness within you. It is the higher self, for lack of better words, that is doing all the heavy lifting here. And a phrase that I would often refer to was a passage from the Bible, and that is, I and my Father are one, but the Father is greater than I. I, my human self, Missy Renee, and my Father, or God, awareness, are one, but the Father, God, is greater than Missy Renee. And this would always serve as a reminder that as the human self, as the conditioned ego, as Missy Renee, that is not who is creating. That is not who needs to manage all of the things. That is not the one that can conceive of all of the ways in which this is going to come to pass. And this is how manifestation should be effortless, because you are already always manifesting without even trying. This comes as naturally to us as breathing, as sleeping. There's no effort that goes in to being a creator, because that is what you already are. All that you are doing consciously is bringing into awareness, is imagining what you desire to experience instead of the things that you don't want. That is all we are doing here. And yes, it really is that simple. So if, when you are imagining, you feel tense, your scenes feel forced, you're getting lost in all of the details, you feel like you need to manage every aspect of it, if you're having trouble feeling it, if you are having trouble enjoying it, then you are putting in too much effort. So stop. Relax the body, take some deep breaths, maybe do a minute or so of scanning, see if there's any tension that you need to release, and then try to return back to that state of the wish fulfilled. That is the distinction between persistence, or should I say consistency, and trying to force this and putting in too much effort. We need to break away from the idea that we have to manage this as the conscious human thinking mind. As Missy Renee, I am not the one doing all the work here. I'm not the one managing and trying to force and trying to fight and trying to push. I know it can be a reflex of ours, especially when we are scared, especially if we are triggered. We may try to force all of these affirmations or try to force ourselves to go to the end, but you're probably going to find a lot of resistance and a lot of pushback when we take that route. So all we need to remember when it comes to persistence is that this just means the practice of redirecting our attention back to the wish fulfilled, but not using force. It is understanding that as humans, we have decades of conditioning that we are learning to undo. We are learning to recondition years and years and years of unconscious natural programming, things that we just do on autopilot without even giving it a thought. So at first, it is very likely, almost a guarantee, that we're going to find ourselves navigating back to that old state, because that's what we've always done. So it is catching yourself when this happens and just bringing your attention back to the state of the wish fulfilled, but doing so in a way that feels natural, in a way that feels relaxed, in a way that feels effortless. If we are noticing strain, if we are noticing tension, if we are noticing difficulty with the feeling of the imaginal act, then we are putting too much willpower into these acts. Because just like with learning any new skill, as we continue to practice redirecting our attention, this will inevitably become second nature for you. And the more that you do this, the more that you practice moving your attention back to the state of the wish fulfilled, but doing so passively, doing so intuitively, doing so while relaxed, the more that we get into a pattern with where we are going in imagination, the more that we continue to redirect to the state of the wish fulfilled, the more natural and unconscious this new desired state will become. But for the love of everything that is good and holy in this world, stop forcing it. Please, please. I love you. Stop. And you're going to find that this becomes more and more enjoyable. And that is truly key. You should be enjoying this. If you are imagining something desirable, it should feel good. It should feel lifting. It should feel light. It should feel joyous. It should fill us with ease and comfort and satisfaction. That is how you know you're doing this right. That is how you persist. That is how you actually persist. We are consistently and frequently directing our attention back to the state of the wish fulfilled until that state becomes completely natural to us, until we just occupy that, until that new state, that new way of thinking becomes the dominant way of thinking. And once we do this, and once we understand this, that is how you will manifest literally anything in this world that you want. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I hope this helped to clarify a few things. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you are interested in checking out any of my other resources, I will leave links down below to my coaching programs, my workshops and masterclasses, my blog, my podcast, my social channels. Got a ton of resources down in that description box below, so don't forget to check that out. Also, don't forget to check out the other videos on this channel. Be sure to check out my Manifestation Fundamentals playlist. Each video is a different topic, but it all talks about how to manifest the greatest life ever. So until we meet again, you guys, as always, please take care, be well, and never forget to persist through the path of least resistance. Work smarter, not harder. Happy manifesting, guys.